Michael. I think with that, we'll start with roll call.
Alderman Bob Bauman. Mr. Mark Flaherty. Mr. James Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Scott Mansky.
Here.
Mr. Greg Marcus. Ms. Aichasawa. We have a quorum.
Great. First order of business is any discussion and the approval of the meeting minutes from our last Finance and Personnel Committee meeting, which was May 11th. Any discussion? Would seek a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Marty, I'll turn it over to you real quick to give some opening comments.
Great, thank you. The plan this morning is to spend most of this meeting reviewing the 2023 forecast and then really delving into the proposed 2024 budget. Just a couple notes before Steve takes over. At next Friday's board meeting, we will be seeking board approval on four different items. So I just want to make you aware of them for next week. One is the approval of the 2024 budget. We need, and we'll be sharing with the board next week, we need a resolution approved by the board allowing the district to enroll in the WRS pension plan. As you all know, because as part of Act 12, the city's pension plan is shutting down as far as allowing for new participants as of December 31st. Historically, we have participated in the city's pension plan, so any new hires effective 1/1/24 need to participate in the WRS plan, and we need a board resolution acknowledging same. We've been in touch with the WRS. We're ready to join, but we do need the resolution from the board as the final component of that packet. Also, as part of the budget and operating plan, subsequent to the budget getting approved, we will seek a resolution for the board to authorize us to access funds to support the 2024 capital budget. And then lastly, as we've shared with you since May, officer positions are up, so we will be electing new officers. I have gotten confirmation for those existing in those positions: Jim Cantor as chair, Grady Crosby as vice chair, Greg Marcus as treasurer, and Mark Flaherty as secretary. All have expressed their desire to continue in those positions. To this point in time, we have not received any other interest, but I'll let the board know prior to next week's meeting. And with that, Jim, I turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Marty. Thanks, Marty. Any questions on that for Marty? All right, with that, Steve, we'll turn it over to you. We'll go into our financial report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. As Marty mentioned, today's agenda, as well as the board meeting next week, are finance heavy as management presents its 24 budget. We're going to touch briefly on the 23 forecast, but the bulk of our time today will focus on the upcoming year. Of course, if after today's meeting there are any questions regarding 23 or 24 numbers, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Marty directly. So in your packet today, we've included the standard financial reports for the current year, which are on pages 6 through 17. And while we won't be reviewing every page, I do want to highlight a few points. So we're going to start on page 9 first, which shows our projected year-end forecast. And it's showing that we've seen an improvement by $5.5 million since the May board meeting, which is noted on line 65, column O. This improvement is driven in large part by better than expected investment income earned on expansion project debt proceeds, which is noted on line 35, interest income. While these earnings are treated as revenue to the district, they are restricted for use on the project. You'll notice some variation with other revenue and expense line items. Collectively, however, aside from interest income, our current projections are not materially different from those provided in May. So let's go back a few pages to page 7, which compares the current annual forecast to our 23 budget. You can see that we expect to beat budget by $6.9 million, as noted on line 65, column G. Again, much of this positive variance is driven by better than expected investment income earned on expansion project debt proceeds and also on our restricted revenue accounts noted on line 35. Much of the rest of the income statement categories collectively come in at or near budget, which again is the same story we told in May. You can see line 14, total operating income in column H is down by just under 4%. This is driven in part by taking off sale certain areas of the south building as we work to renovate and improve those spaces as part of the expansion project. With those areas off sale, there's, of course, less opportunity to book events and generate income. Line 27, column H, shows that operating expenses are running a little higher than budget by just over 3%, due in large part to event expense, as noted on line 20. The event expense category captures primarily those payments made to our arena tenants in the form of revenue share on food and beverage and merchandise sales. The Admirals in particular had a strong ending to their 22-23 season via an extended playoff run, which helped drive up this number. Line 34, tax revenues are modestly better than budget. To be clear, these represent actual collections through July, with August through December collections forecasted at budget for now. And line 35, interest income, we talked about this already, but the bulk of this variance is related to the project. We are also seeing positive returns in our unrestricted accounts, which generates additional unbudgeted free cash flow. As for non-operating expenses, no new update on big variances since May. Line 46, pension is greater than budget by over $500,000, and line 49, Visit Milwaukee, is up relative to budget by $846K. This is due to stronger than expected tax revenues earned in fourth quarter of '22. At this point in our fiscal year, we don't believe there's a lot of risk left in these numbers. The one exception is tax revenues. As I just mentioned, the reports in front of you include actual results through July. Overall, however, management is not expecting much variation in the overall net income forecast by year end. I do want to quickly touch on the exhibits pertaining to the project, and those are starting on page 15 there. This provides a summary of the project budget as well as the value of the contracts encumbered to date. As we've discussed at prior meetings, with most of the project budget under contract, the district faces very little exposure to pricing risk. Page 16 is a quick summary of expected cash drawdowns for the rest of the project life cycle, and page 17 is a more comprehensive work paper that management uses to confirm balances within the project fund and project our investment earnings. No significant changes to these project documents from our last update in May. The project remains on budget and on time for substantial completion in spring of '24. So before we jump into the '24 budget, are there any questions on '23? Okay. So consistent with past practice, Marty and I have had an opportunity to meet with most of you prior to this meeting to review with you the process and assumptions we've used to develop the budget and solicit your feedback and input. First, let me say thank you for your time, your feedback, and support. We get an immense amount of value out of those discussions, and we hope you have a deeper understanding of the district's strategy and business operations as a result. Today, I'll attempt to keep my comments at a higher level, as most of this information has been presented to you. Following my comments, and after answering any additional questions committee members may have, we'll ask the committee for a motion to recommend that the full board adopt this budget at next week's board meeting. So let's start with page 18 of your packet. This document summarizes the key outcomes, risks, and opportunities in 2024, and I do want to briefly touch on this before we get into the actual numbers. First, to outcomes. Number one, we will show year-over-year improvement in the district's unrestricted revenues and expenses. The influx of revenues from new business related to the expansion will begin to offset the pre-opening expenses the district has been and will be incurring until the north building opens in May of '24. The second outcome is that the district will show year-over-year growth in its restricted revenue fund. If you recall, in 2022, we borrowed $7 million from the restricted balance to fund a portion of the project budget gap. After that borrowing, we were left with a balance of about $20 million. By year-end '23, we expect that balance to again get very close to $27 million, and by year-end to grow to over $31 million. The key takeaway from both of these outcomes is that the stability of the unrestricted fund and the growth of the restricted fund really provide the foundation and financial wherewithal for the district to fully leverage the expansion and continue to build and grow this business beyond 2024. That said, I do want to highlight 7 notable business impacts that will affect the district's budget in '24 and really make it a unique year in our history. Number one is the RNC, of course. As currently budgeted, This event provides a boost of about 20% in operating revenues relative to a normalized year. Number two is the opening of the North Building. We will begin hosting events in the North Building in May, not including the RNC. We expect a partial year of North Building business to boost meeting and convention operating revenues by at least 15%. Number three, parking. Our new parking structure is expected to begin generating revenue in May and is expected to provide meaningful income to the district in this category for the first time in 3 years. If you recall, the district had operated a surface lot up until July of 21, where the expansion is now being built. Number four is naming rights. 2024 represents the first full contract year of our naming rights agreement with Baird. 2023 was classified as a transition year, and the associated license fee was less than the payment we'll receive in 24. Number five is labor. This is where the bulk of the district's pre-opening expenses have been charged. As we've worked to scale up our team in preparation for the opening of the North Building, we saw an abnormal year-over-year increase in this expense from 22 to 23 as we began to hire positions mid-year and into third quarter and into fourth quarter. And we'll see another abnormal increase from 23 to 24 as those salaries and wages hit our books for a full 12 months. Number six is non-operating expenses, and I want to quickly highlight 3 notable categories here. The district's insurance program will increase substantially year over year due to the increased property insurance that the district will pay on the North Building, which is combined with a very challenging renewal environment right now. Number two is the pension contribution for the district in 24 will remain historically high for the district. However, as we'll see here in just a minute, it will be less than what the district paid in 2023 due to the Act 12 legislation. And lastly, the district is not budgeting for a pilot payment to the city in 2024. Pursuant to the pilot agreement, if the district does not achieve a net income of $1 million or more in a given year, no pilot payment is due. Based on the 23 forecast, that net income threshold will not be met. We'll continue to, of course, monitor the financials for the remainder of the year, and we'll provide a final confirmation to the city on this matter upon the adoption of the 23 audited financial statements. Thank you for the question, Alderman. The primary difference, I would say, between the net income on the financial reports in front of you and the net income and the pilot payment agreement is that the net income and the pilot payment is really a measure of unrestricted revenues to the district. It doesn't consider the restricted tax revenues that are brought in by the district. At the same time, it doesn't include the restricted expenses that the district has on its books.
So if that's what the agreement says, I'll leave it to smarter people than I in the field of finance and law, for that matter, to draw an opinion on this problem. But this is a problem. I mean, this is not how you treat partners, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mr. Mansky?
If that's what the agreement says, that's what the agreement says.
Mr. Mansky?
Is this something that is reviewed by your outside auditors at all, or could it be reviewed by them and getting a report from them that basically verifies the calculation?
Yes, of course. It's not something we've previously asked them to do, but it is something we've discussed doing moving forward. The final pilot payment calculation in prior years, which the district met and paid to the city, were based off of the audited financial statements, tie back to the agreement and the definitions that Alderman Bauman referenced. In terms of the 23 calculation, Alderman, there is a reconciliation that ties back to the documents in front of you. Happy to share that with you and the rest of the committee here as well.
Because, okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, to the county comptroller's point, that was actually something we were just discussing last week with Steve and Marty about having the external auditors do a recalculation next year after the audited financials are complete, because I think that would be, like you said too, the most independent way for the city and the center district to have comfort that, someone else verified it. And I think that that's probably what we're going to do going forward, as long as the external auditors agree to it.
Yeah, Milwaukee County has a number of different agreements with private entities. For example, we had a lease payment when the county closed Doyne Hospital back in the 1990s. And then each year, their auditor would provide us with a complicated calculation was developed, for that. And we wanted to have independent verification of the number. So we would request their auditors to go through their financials and provide that to us. Plus, we had the ability for ourselves, if we needed to go through that calculation with them. So each year we would receive that, and it would provide us a verification. So I think that is, we just learned from the past that this is a way to get an independent verification when we weren't, But the nice thing is here, you have more or less an open set of books too, that a separate verification can be done by those outside too.
Alderman Bauman, Steve and I and the leadership team of the district has been following the various meetings that the Finance Committee has had over the past 3 weeks. We're aware of the different conversations that have been had in those meetings and the concern that the city has, which from our perspective seems to be a disconnect in the interpretation or familiarity with the agreement. I'm very happy to get together with anyone from the Common Council who wants to go over and discuss the contract, the history of it. We were as disappointed as the city when we ran the calculation based on the calculator in the contract that it indicated that a payment would not be due for 23 into 24. As the contract addresses, that's not done in final form until the final audit in May of 24. So if in fact our financial outcome changes over the next 3 months and the calculator supports the fact of a $750,000 payment due the city by May, June of 24, of course we would make that payment.
And then that begs the question, why don't we renegotiate this agreement? So we are treated no different than Visit Milwaukee.
I would love to have that
Payment in
conversation.
lieu of taxes is due and owing every year. If it's like taxes, it's not contingent on some extremely complicated formula that's in all kinds of language, which are terms of art, which a layman is not going to be automatically familiar with. I don't know who reviewed this definition. I mean, the council did not have this language at the time we voted on this. This was drafted after the fact because this was voted on in April. This contract is dated August 1st. So presumably, there were lawyers involved that came up with the actual language, terms of art in the accounting world, which a layman, including a non-accountant lawyer, may not be familiar with. And this language is in here, we figure, oh, we're gonna get, X amount, X percentage, a flat rate. I mean, a flat rate is a flat rate. Flat rate is not contingent on something. The percentage that kicks in 2025, that's a percentage of something, fine. But you look at the big numbers that are generated here, tens of millions of dollars, the taxes alone in the amount of, $43 million, and suddenly there's no money to pay the city $750,000. That doesn't strike the layperson, the average constituent out there, as right. So let's make it right. Let's amend the agreement so that it's very clear that a payment in lieu of taxes means every year a payment is made, period. Just like your utility bills or your insurance policies or any of the other fixed expenses which are obligations of the district, notwithstanding net income. Somehow we're in the caboose all the time, bringing up the rear, and there's a problem with some formula and you're not cutting the insurance premium, but city, you're out.
Alderman Bauman, with all due respect, we understand the concern the city has. We are willing to meet. I reached out to President Perez a week and a half ago to try and provide additional information on the interpretation of the contract and have not been contacted by anyone from the city other than Eich's office to go through a review of the pilot payment calculation. When we entered into this contract, it was voted upon by both the Common Council as well as our board to agree to a pilot payment. The pilot payment concept, as you're very well familiar with, came about because of the city's desire to share in the successes that an expansion would show to the district and that the city should participate in that. The contract reflects the fact that the city shares based upon an agreed-upon formula as we see successes with the expansion. It was reviewed in detail, and the reason why you didn't have it in April is it took 4 months for the two different attorneys representing our sides to come to legalese that both sides could agree to, and subsequently signed by the mayor of the city, as well as a representative for the, I don't think Aicha signed it, I think it was signed by one of the other members, but this was not something that was done under any condition other than an honorable agreement that we thought was fair at the time, and when we developed the calculation, this was pre-COVID, we used the financial model that we had in 19, which at that point was our best year ever, to develop a model not anticipating what we would see in 20 and 21.
So the answer is no. There's no willingness to renegotiate this agreement.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't say, I never say no. I said,
I'm confident we can have 50 auditors look at this, and I suspect, I have great faith in Mr. Marsh, he's highly competent. I suspect his calculation is absolutely correct, is my guess. And we can do the audit thing, fine, that makes everybody happy. The problem is the agreement in the first place, because I suspected this, but of course, I'm all, whoa, you're just being unreasonable, you're being, no, look at the definition. Net income is not always what you think it is, depending on the exact wording. Oh, no, this is all fair, this is great, we've got a great agreement here. Well, here we are. And, I mean, if we're true partners, if you want to be adversarial, we're just like MetLife, and we're just strictly business, just business, fine. But this is a different relationship. I hope, and I trust, and I pray, and we'd say, no, this really isn't fair. You guys are at least entitled to your nominal fixed payment, given the total financial
Alderman
position.
Bauman, I believe we have demonstrated we are partners. We entered into this agreement after we were certified to get to move forward with the state's moral obligation, and then that was rescinded by the city. So we operate in good faith. We are happy to have further discussions with the city to address the contract. But when you talk about partnership, a partnership goes both ways, and that means both sides have to adhere to the letter of the contract, which we have not seen.
Net income could have been defined as item line 65, right?
But sir, it wasn't. And it was all done to reflect the improvement in our business for a convention center that had not yet opened.
Let me step in, please. We agree that we'll have
We're
further
getting nowhere.
discussions on this, right, Bob? right? We want to get back to the business at hand on our board here and the representation of our board and what we're representing here. The city's interest certainly is being represented on your side, Alderman Bobbin, understand that. And I think the openness of Marty and the team to have that discussion moving forward, is that fair to you?
Whatever you want to do. I'm just pointing this out. And frankly, if the mayor isn't worried about this, the controller's not demanding a renegotiation, who am I to raise the subject, I guess? I'm just some local dog catcher. So, no big deal. So,
I don't think anyone has said that, Alderman Bauman. I think what we're trying to do is
well, you
figure
haven't
out.
even heard from the mayor, have you? Correct? You get a call from the mayor, says, what the hell is this? I thought net income meant line 65 or line 28, where it says net income.
The only representative from the city of Milwaukee who we have had any conversations with is Aicha.
Okay, well, if our people don't care about this, I guess, why should I, right?
Mr. Baumann,
I
Alderman
know,
Baumann,
that's not your problem.
well, we have
That's not
tremendous,
your problem.
we have tremendous respect for you as a common council member, as one of our board members. We have always demonstrated a willingness to discuss the issues with you and address them in a professional manner, and this is no different.
Okay.
Right, so I think moving forward, we will have that discussion offline. I think everyone, Aich has been great in working with the team on this. Bob, obviously, we want to make sure as a board, we're doing the right thing first and foremost for the Wisconsin Center District, but also making sure that all the agreements that we have are in place that represent what we have going on in the city and being good partners with the city, as Marty said. So I think moving forward, let's have that discussion offline to see where we can take this to the next level, right? All right, Steve? I don't know what point we were on.
Yeah, okay. Just the last highlight I want to make about 24 budget here is the investment management continues to make it improving the culture of the district and turning it into a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Our culture call sign letters, BPX, have been the banner under which employees and management alike have been empowered to create an environment that is conducive to increasing employee retention rates and attracting new talent to the district. This has also been proven as a way for the district to differentiate itself to meeting planners when our sales team goes on the road to sell our business. There's a number of investments being made here, primarily as part of the human resources budget towards culture improvement, including the creation of an employee engagement manager position, execution of the annual employee engagement survey, employee recognition programs, and cultural and ethnic awareness campaigns, to name a few. Being named an employer of choice this past May was validation that these investments do matter. And while we continue to make these investments, I'll segue here into business risks that the district will face with its 24 budget. And the first one is talent retention and attraction. It remains a competitive labor market, and labor costs have been a challenge over the past several years and could continue to be so in 24, particularly for our food and beverage provider, Levy, and our part-time workforce. Both Levy and the district have worked to provide competitive wages. How the 24 labor market plays out, though, remains to be seen. The second risk, blue sky and tax revenues, in part because they can be affected by unexpected negative macroeconomic forces that affect the social and consumer business segments of the meeting and convention business and or could impact business or leisure travel. While we believe our numbers are reasonable, COVID proved how these revenue streams can be impacted in a negative way. And lastly, number three, the final risk is any sort of potential delay in opening the north building for whatever reason. At this time, as I mentioned before, we are expected to open in the spring of 24. There is no delay in construction, on budget. Any comments on that, Marty? No.
The only comment is, Steve, as I keep telling you, we are on time and on budget, and at this point have no concerns about the building opening on time. But
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you for keeping that on as a risk.
Along with those risks, there's also opportunities in 24 that could cause us to exceed our budget goals. RNC is the first opportunity. While our campus has been leased to the RNC, how they might use it still remains to be determined. It's possible our budget projections are conservative, which may mean some upside, particularly for our ancillary revenue streams. Blue sky revenues are also an opportunity. While there are risks, there's a possibility that profitability is higher, the number of events we book here is higher. The next two items, 4C and 4D in your packets, are worth noting because they're forward-looking beyond 2024. The first is the impact of 24 on future year bookings. I don't need to tell this committee how important 2024 is not only to the district and to the city. We have an enormous opportunity to showcase both when the RNC comes to town in July. We're also hosting Connect in 24, which is a conference that meeting and convention planners from all over the country attend, not to mention the buzz and excitement that will be created when we open the North Building. All of these will help drive interest and demand for future year bookings for the district and the city. The second opportunity here is that restricted reserve balance. At some point along the way, we'll have enough to be confident that our rainy day fund is fully replenished. Therefore, what do we do with the excess? There's a number of things we can do with that money, including debt defeasance, capital expenditure funding, or future expansion of the convention center, phase 4, so to speak. Marty and I are continuing to have discussions with our financial fiduciary advisor, Baird, on this matter, and in the coming 12 to 16 months, we could be ready to discuss further what those opportunities look like to the committee. So page 19 of your packet is when we get into the numbers, and this is what I like to call the bottom line document, so to speak. This shows the net income expected to be generated from the 24 budget and compares that against the 23 forecast. And I think this is an important document because if we relied solely on line 70 of the income statement to tell the story of the 24 budget, it would appear to be an uninspiring one to tell, as net income is expected to get worse by $9.6 million year over year. However, we see on lines 2 through 5 how the district's net income is segregated into its various funds. Line 2 summarizes unrestricted funds. Year over year, we're seeing improvement in this category for a lot of the reasons I just summarized: the RNC, opening of the North Building, parking, naming rights, et cetera. Line 3 summarizes restricted funds. Again, seeing year over year improvement in this category as restricted revenue collections are expected to outpace interest expense accruals. And lines 2 and 3 tie back to those two key budget outcomes that I mentioned at the start of this discussion. And they're really the barometer by which we measure the health of our organization. Projecting significant year-over-year increases in both of these categories is extremely positive. Lines 4 and 5 really identify why line 70 of the income statement is showing such a negative year-over-year variance. Line 4 represents investment income on expansion project proceeds. In 24, we're expecting to earn about $7.5 million less than 23 due to the reduced balances in the project accounts. And line 5 represents depreciation expense. You can see we expect this to increase by $7.5 million year over year as we put the North Building into service. Combined, lines 4 and 5 represent a negative variance relative to 2023 forecast of nearly $15 million. However, both line items don't measure or impact, in management's view, the health of the ongoing operations of the district. Any questions on that? Page 20 is the event mix. The budget process really begins with establishing the event mix from which we can derive direct operating revenues and expenses. Looking at the event mix summary, you'll see several years of data. Column A represents our 24 number. On line 21, you'll find we're projecting to host 319 events across our campus next year. Column B represents our 23 budget numbers, which we're at 300. And column C is what we're forecasting for 23. You can see there's a little bit of a drop to the 23 budget, again, driven by that work in the South Building to refurbish and renovate in time for the opening of the expansion. Overall, we do believe this budget event mix is a good representation of what we can expect for the upcoming year. Pages 21 and 22 are the income statement, and jumping down to line 70 on page 22, you can see that net income number of negative $18 million, which I referenced before on page 19. Sort of beat this number up already, so I'd like to instead highlight some of the individual line items more specifically, starting at the top. Line 14, operating income is expected to be up 50% year over year, a more than significant increase than we'd otherwise see in a typical year. A couple factors driving this number. RNC is number one and really responsible for the significant increase in line 1 event room fees. Other ancillary revenues, which are lines 2, 3, 4, and 8, are up due to the increased event activity from the North Building. Lines 11 and 12 are also up. 11 is the naming rights revenue. We touched on that earlier, expecting to see an increase due to the full operating year of the Baird Center naming rights agreement. And line 12, parking revenue up again due to the projected revenues earned from the parking structure opening in May. Line 27, total operating expenses is up 28% year over year. As mentioned before, district's labor expense will be greater in '24 due to the hiring of additional personnel required to operate and maintain the expanded premises. This is noted on line 15 and subsequently line 16. Line 18, utilities is up by about 20%. We expect the rates to remain relatively stable year over year. However, we are budgeting for increased consumption from the north building opening. You can see there's other puts and takes here, but the net result is that line 28 operating income is at $4.8 million, a substantial increase from 23 and the highest net operating income since Marty joined the organization in 2018. Moving on to non-operating revenues, you can see tax revenues, line 34, are expected to increase overall by 8.6%. I would consider this to be a moderate projection for tax revenue growth in '24, not overly aggressive, not overly conservative. Page turn here. Line 35, interest income is expected to decrease by $7.4 million. Most of this decrease is associated with the depletion of project funds. As previously discussed, this negative year-over-year variance does not impact the restricted or unrestricted funds in a material way. Moving on to non-operating expenses, you see lines 41, salaries, as well as complementary line items 42, 43, 44, and 45 are increasing as a result of scaling up positions for the opening of the north building. Line 46, pension, as I mentioned before, is expected to decrease year over year as a result of Act 12 legislation. Line 49, Visit Milwaukee, is increasing year over year by about 7% based on 23 tax projections. Line 53, insurance, is increasing significantly year over year due to the increased property insurance bill associated with the north building. And one other item I want to mention before we leave this page is line 68, that depreciation expense. You can see that's expected to more than double as we begin depreciating the north building in 2024. The next page of your packet is page 23, and that's really the detail behind that page 19 document we reviewed before, the bottom line document, so to speak. Unless there's a question, I wasn't going to spend a lot of time here, and we can move on to the capital budget, which is detailed on pages 24 and 25. You can see that the list is pretty substantial, as was the case in prior years. We segmented capital expenditures into 3 tiers, with Tier A being the priority and focusing on projects that deal with life safety, building functionality, code compliance, contractual obligations, and where applicable, revenue-generating opportunities. Our budgeted spend in '24 of about $3 million is a little less than what we saw in '23. Not a lot of really big projects on the list this year. A lot of smaller ones, though, that require our attention. Any questions on capital budget? Pages 26 and 27 in our packet are the budget cash flow projections. One exhibit for restricted revenues, the other for unrestricted. We'll start with the unrestricted first. Line number 1 is where we expect the cash balance to be as of January 1st. Line 25 is what we expect the cash balance to be as of December 31st of that same year. And line 24 is that net change year over year decrease of about $1.7 million. Moving on to the restricted cash flows, as mentioned before, the news is positive here as well, where we continue to show growth in that fund balance and expect to end the year at $31 million plus. As we grow and hopefully as this balance grows, we'll be considering options of how to best use this resource. As I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, the stability of both of these funds is great news for the district and is going to position us well going into the 2025 fiscal year, our first normalized operating year of really a new era here at the district. I understand this was a quick run through the budget. Scott, do you have any questions? Mr. Chair.
Can you just go back to the capital budget a second?
Yeah.
Page 24 and 25. So what does the differences of the columns mean, A, B, and C?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So column A, the sum of column A is just over $3 million, and that is what we're asking to move forward with in 2024. And those are the projects, Scott, let me just back up for a second. Every year when we begin the CapEx budget process, we ask departments from all across the organization to generate a list of things that require attention and investment going into the next fiscal year. All those projects are consolidated and bubble up to a team that reviews them and prioritizes them into these different tiers. Tier A are those projects that deal with life safety, code compliance, contractual obligations, and revenue-generating opportunities. B and C are those projects that are on the radar, Scott, but we're electing not to pursue in '24, really due to limited resources. I mean, if we could do them all at once, we would, but those stay on the radar, and it's possible that B and C projects could become a Tier A project in future budget years. Marty, anything to add to that?
And where does the funding normally come from for the column A items, the 3,027,000?
Yeah, at the start of the meeting, Marty talked about a resolution that we'll ask the board to approve next week. There's a portion of funding that the trustee holds to fund capital expenditures. In '24, Scott, we expect that number to be almost $1.3 million. Now, the $1.3 million that the trustee holds actually comes from the unrestricted tax revenues, but they have to be earmarked for the CapEx budget. So the almost 3 covers a portion of the $3 million. The rest is funded from our unrestricted reserve balance.
And you don't see any issue with that? So you got 1.3 million coming from one amount, and that means the remaining 2 million or whatever will come from operations or from unrestricted cash. You don't see any issue with that, correct? Or you do?
I don't see an issue with that in 2024, Scott. I think the expectations of the district in 2025 is that our unrestricted cash flow will be positive, as it has been in the past. In '23 and '24, we've talked about producing negative cash flow as a result of having to scale up for operating the north building, which has caused us to have to dip into our reserves a little bit to fund a portion of that CapEx budget. If we had to continuously dip into those reserves, Scott, for the foreseeable future, I think it could be problematic, and Marty and I would be talking about different ways to fund CapEx, but in the short term, specifically for 2024, management doesn't see an issue with that.
So, sorry, on page 26, which is your unrestricted cash flow projection for 2024, you're seeing that remaining steady throughout the year, or?
What we're showing in this document here is that by year end, we would expect there to be negative cash flow on unrestricted to the tune of $1.7 million.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand that. Is it that okay, because your beginning cash is 10.5 million up in the upper left corner under line 1 in January, right?
That's right.
And then you expect to get down to 8.8 million.
That's right.
So part of that decrease of the 1.7 is due to the fact of the capital.
That's
part
right.
of that.
That's right.
Okay.
That is detailed on line 22 there. We'll see the CapEx outflows.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And Scott, this was not a surprise to Steve and me. Going back to 2020, as we looked at the expansion coming online, we identified that there were going to be added expenses in preparation for the expansion going on live before we would see the incremental cash coming in from parking and from additional data availability and additional event income. So this is not unexpected at all. And as far as being concerned, we always want to have more money in our accounts, but we're very confident that as the business progresses, going into that reserve will be less and less.
So I guess I have one more question. So the new north building will open. Do you have any concern at all that there may be unanticipated capital expenditures as a result of the north building? You know, it opens up, you know, something new starts and it goes like, well, that didn't work the way we wanted it to work? Or is that under your agreement, or, you know, I mean, is there potential that you're going to have to take the items that you have in column A on your capital expenditures and possibly move them off to move it towards items of the north building? That's kind of my question. Or do you have other funds available to do that, or where would that come from?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I mean, if we're talking about in terms of like a system failure or otherwise, that sort of expense would be covered under warranties. If it's just a miss that wasn't part of the planning process, and after a month of being open, we realized, boy, we really should have purchased this item or built this out in a different way, how would we fund that? I think there's a couple of different ways. We could reevaluate the current capital expenditure budget to determine if there are some items we could push back into the B column to instead fund this item. We could dip even further into our unrestricted revenues to fund something like that, or we could issue a short-term bond out of our restricted reserve balance and fund it that way.
We're also sitting on contingency funds within the project. So if something should occur, there is contingency that I'd love to be committing and spending to already, but we are intentionally holding back in committing contingency for that very reason, Scott, for something unforeseen developing.
Yeah, that's the type of, that's kind of what I'm looking for, that you have either contingency funds or you have the ability to adjust to the situation, you know, just in case there is something that occurs. I think that's where my concern comes in.
And when we get the approval on the budget and the release of the funds to do the capital, we're really busy in the first and second quarters, so the ability to do any major projects isn't available. So we're usually actually committing or spending monies for CapEx late second, third quarter for the balance of the year. So if something unforeseen were to pop up, we have the ability to react. And when Steve talks about issuing or tapping into this would clearly be with board approval. We would come to the board and make you aware of anything of that magnitude. But with a 20-plus-year-old building, we haven't come up on anything significant that has caused us to reevaluate our CapEx budget. And just as we look at the properties, don't see, you can't predict the unforeseen, but we're very comfortable that we're not putting the unrestricted fund at risk at all.
Are there any other questions for Steve? Great.
Well, I think that, Mr. Chairman, without any questions, I'd propose we ask for a motion to have the committee recommend that the full board adopt this budget at next week's board meeting.
Right, at this time, I'd ask for a motion to recommend approval by the board of the 2024 budget as proposed by the administration. Yep, Scott?
I'll make a motion to approve
Do we have-
the recommended budget.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, any opposed? Great. Thank you. Motion is approved, or, yes. All right, with that, Marty, we'll turn over to you for the CEO report. I know we're a little bit tighter on time here, so.
Just a few things.
Sorry. Okay. Go for it. There
Thank you,
is
Greg.
tour. All right. Thank you. We'll need those. Thank you.
Just a couple.
You don't need me for any more votes or anything, do you?
No, we're, no more votes. No more votes. No, thank you, Greg.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Take care.
Just a few things. As far as at the board meeting, be talking about giving an update on where we are with bookings for '24, and we'll be getting from our sales team the impact of the expansion, short and long-term bookings. So I'll be able to give you a fairly comprehensive update on what the next 3 to 5 years look like because of the expansion. Talk about some information on the grand opening gala of the North Building. Mike Abrams will be doing a presentation on an expansion update about the different goals as he traditionally does. A couple of videos that have been developed over the past several months since our May board meeting that I'd like to share with the board, dealing with the awarding of the gala giveaway promotion that we ran, that was awarded to the Autism Society. That was just before it was awarded, just after our May board meeting. But I like to call that the Publishers Clearinghouse video, because they did not know they were being awarded it when we went to meet with them. It had some great comments from our employees subsequent to the employee engagement survey. And then subsequent to the board meeting that's being held in this room next week, we will have set up downstairs for your review at your leisure. I believe it's 14 or so stations that will have approximately 56 easels showing all of the sample boards for the expansion. So you'll be able to see the carpeting, furniture, wayfinding signage, everything that's being worked on across the street as we speak. All those decisions have been made, and thought it's appropriate to share that with you at your leisure. We're also going to be sending out next week an invitation with dates and times for the board to schedule a tour of the building. If so inclined, we'd love to take you onto the property. Protective gear is required. We're limited to the size of the groups, and we're going to be sending out an invitation for you to sign up so you can see firsthand what we're doing and what to expect. So that's really the gist of what I'll be getting into detail next week, Jim, in the CEO report.
Any questions for Marty? Other than that, in your, excuse me, in your packet is the board meeting agenda. Marty kind of went through that already. We will have a couple votes. We will have a vote on the budget. We will have a vote on election of officers. So please make sure that you're able to attend that as we move forward. The meeting dates, we have those also are in your packet and in your booklet, and Michael sends those out. I do believe we have one in November as well. Is that right? November 2nd? Is their next committee date? Yeah, tentatively, based on anything that moves forward, right? Is that a tentative? It's a tentative date. Anybody else have any? Yes, Scott.
So we'll get copies of what these resolutions look like before the meeting then?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be part of the budget packet that Mike will be sending out later
Okay.
this week, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, that will all be sent out, and within our process of making sure everyone's aware of everything before the meeting. Any other discussion items, please bring them up now or send a note over, and we can make sure we get those things on in time with all the process we have to follow.
And anyone who's interested in running for an office, let me know. Happy to add to the list.
Absolutely. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. All right, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Mr. Grady Crosby,
Here.
Representative Kalen Haywood,
Present.
Senator Latanya Johnson, Mr. James Cantor.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. First order of business is the discussion and approval of the meeting minutes. Is this, on here it says March. Was it March, Steve?
That's right. The May Governance Committee meeting did not occur.
Great.
So
That's
March
right.
was the last one.
That's right. So approval of the meeting minutes from March 2nd of 2023. Any discussion? Seek a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting minutes are approved. With that, we'll turn it over to Steve. We'll go into the financial report and then go into our budget presentation. Or Marty, did you have anything you wanted to say beforehand? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're
Yeah,
not
I
on the
ju-
agenda, but
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned something offline. I apologize for that. Just for your information, at the board meeting next week, we're going to be asking the board to vote on 4 different issues or topics. After the presentation today and then next week, we're going to seek approval from the board for our 2024 budget. We're also going to seek approval on a resolution that will allow us to enter into the Wisconsin State Retirement Plan. As part of Act 12, the city's retirement plan is being shut down as far as allowing new participants as of 12/31/23. Because we emanated from the city, we have been maintained in the city's pension plan, and therefore anyone who we hire on or after January 1st, 24 per Act 12 needs to go into the Wisconsin State Plan. We've been in discussions. We've gotten everything. T's are crossed, I's are dotted. The last piece, in order to be admitted into the plan, is to get a resolution from the board allowing us to enter into said plan. So you'll get that resolution in advance, and we're hoping that the board will support that. We're also going to submit a resolution for your approval next week, allowing us to access funds in our unrestricted reserve account to fund our 2024 capital budget, which you'll see in today's presentation, and something that we have, the district has done year after year as far as drawing upon that fund to help support capital. And then lastly, we will have an election of officers. The 4 individuals currently serving as officers for the organization, Mr. Cantor, Mr. Crosby, Mr. Marcus, and Mr. Flaherty, have all expressed their desire to continue in their position. So we do have those 4 individuals on a ticket, if you will, for consideration. At this point in time, we have not received any other names of individuals looking to be an officer for the coming year. And with that said, that's just some housekeeping I wanted to make you aware of before we get into the actual financial presentation.
all right, Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Today's agenda, as well as the board meeting next week, are finance heavy as management presents its 24 budget. We're going to touch briefly on the 23 forecast today, but the bulk of our time will focus on the upcoming year. Of course, if after today's meeting there are any questions regarding 23 or 24 numbers, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Marty directly. In your packet today, we've included the standard financial reports for the current year, which begins on page 6. And while we won't be reviewing every page, I do want to highlight a few points. So we're going to turn to page, let's see here, I think it's 9 first. Yes, this shows our projected year-end forecast, and we're showing an improvement of $5.5 million since the May board meeting, which is noted on line 65, column O. This improvement is driven in large part by better than expected investment income earned on expansion project debt proceeds, which is noted on line 35, interest income. While these earnings are treated as revenue to the district, they are restricted for use on the project. You'll notice some variation with other revenue and expense line items. Collectively, however, aside from the interest income, our current projections are not materially different from those provided in May. So let's go back a few pages to page 7. Which compares the current annual forecast to our 23 annual budget. You can see that we expect to beat budget by $6.9 million, as noted on line 65, column G. Much of this positive variance, again, is driven by better than expected investment income earned on expansion project debt proceeds and on our restricted revenue accounts, again, noted on line 35. Much of the rest of the income statement categories collectively come in at or near budget, which is, again, the same story we told to the board in May. You can see line 14, operating income in column H is down by just under 4%. This is driven in part by taking off sale certain areas of the south building as we work to renovate and improve those spaces as part of the expansion project. With those areas off sale, there's less opportunity to book events and generate income. Line 27, column H, shows that operating expenses are running higher than budget by just over 3%, due in large part to event expense, as noted on line 20. The event expense category captures primarily those payments made to our arena tenants in the form of revenue share on food and beverage and merchandise sales. The Admirals in particular had a strong ending to their 22-23 season via an extended playoff run, which helped drive this number up. Line 34 tax revenues are modestly better than budget. To be clear, these represent actual collections through July, with August through December collections forecasted at budget for now. Line 35, interest income, while the bulk of this variance is related to the project, we are also seeing positive returns in our unrestricted accounts, which generates additional unbudgeted free cash flow. As for non-operating expenses, really no new update on the big variances since May. Line 46, pension is greater than budget by over $500,000, and line 49, Visit Milwaukee, is up relative to budget by about $846K. This is due to stronger than expected tax revenues earned in fourth quarter 2022. At this point in our fiscal year, we don't believe there's a lot of risk left in these numbers. The one exception is tax revenues. As I just mentioned, the reports in front of you include actual results through July. Overall, however, management is not expecting much variation in the overall net income forecast by year end. I do want to quickly touch on the exhibits pertaining to the project. We're going to flip to page 14, and this provides a summary of the project budget as well as the value of contracts encumbered to date. As we've discussed at prior meetings, with most of the project budget under contract, the district faces very little exposure to pricing risk. Page 15 is a quick summary of the cash drawdowns for the rest of the project life cycle. Neither one of these exhibits have changed in a material way from May. The project remains on budget and on time for substantial completion in spring of '24. So before we jump into the '24 budget, are there any questions on 2023?
No questions?
Okay.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Okay, so just so this committee is aware, the Finance Committee just recommended in their meeting that just concluded to have the full board adopt the 2024 budget at next week's board meeting. In addition to today's discussion with them, Marty and I had a chance to meet with each one of them individually to take a deep dive into these numbers for 2024, so I think this committee can take a bit of comfort knowing that these numbers have been well vetted. Today, I'll attempt to keep my comments at a high level, as we'll be presenting much of this information again at next week's board meeting. Of course, if there are any questions that come up along the way or after this meeting, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Marty. So we're going to start with page 16 of your packet. This document summarizes the key outcomes, risks, and opportunities in 2024, and I do want to briefly touch on these before we get into the numbers today. First to outcomes. Number one, we will show year-over-year improvement in the district's unrestricted revenues and expenses. The influx of revenues from new business related to the expansion will begin to offset those pre-opening expenses the district has been and will be incurring until the north building opens in May of '24. And number two, the district will show year-over-year growth in its unrestricted revenue fund. If you recall, in 2022, we borrowed $7 million from the restricted reserve balance to fund a portion of the project budget gap. After that borrowing, we were left with a balance of about $20 million in this account. By year-end '23, we expect that balance to again get close to that $27 million number, and by year-end '24 to grow over $31 million. The key takeaway from both of these outcomes is that the stability of the unrestricted fund and the growth of the restricted fund really provide the foundation and financial wherewithal for the district to fully leverage the expansion and continue to build and grow the business beyond 2024. That said, we do want to highlight 7 notable business impacts that will affect the district's budget in '24 and really make it a unique year in our history. Number one is the RNC, which is coming to the city in July. Is currently budgeted. This event provides a boost of about 20% in operating revenues relative to a normalized year. Number two, the North Building opens. We will begin hosting events in the North Building in May, not including the RNC. We expect a partial year of North Building business to boost meeting and convention operating revenues by at least 15%. Parking, our new parking structure is expected to begin generating revenue in May and is expected to provide meaningful income to the district in this category for the first time in 3 years. If you recall, the district had operated a surface lot up until July of 2021, where the expansion is now being built. Number four is naming rights. 2024 represents the first full contract year of our naming rights agreement with Baird. 2023 was classified as a transition year, and the associated license fee was less than the payment we'll receive in 2024. Number five is labor. This is where the bulk of the district's pre-opening expenses have been charged as we've worked to scale up our team in preparation for the opening of the North Building. We saw an abnormal year-over-year increase in this expense from 22 to 23 as we began to hire positions mid-year and into third and fourth quarter. And we'll see another abnormal increase from 23 to 24 as those salaries and wages hit our books for a full 12 months. Number six, notable non-operating expenses. I want to quickly highlight three of these. The district's insurance program will increase substantially year over year due to the increased property insurance the district will pay on the North Building, combined with a very challenging renewal environment. The second is the pension contribution. For the district in 2024, this will remain historically high, but it will be actually less than what the district paid in 2023 due to the Act 12 legislation. And lastly, the district is not budgeting for a pilot payment to the city in 2024. Pursuant to the pilot payment agreement, if the district does not achieve a net income of $1 million or more in a given year, no pilot payment is due. Based on the 23 forecast, that net income threshold will not be met. We will continue to monitor the financials for the remainder of the year, and will provide a final confirmation to the city on this matter upon the adoption of the 23 audited financial statements. The last highlight that we want to make on budget is culture sustainment. Management continues to invest in improving the culture of the district and turning that into a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Our culture call sign letters, BPX, which you've all heard many times before, have been the banner under which employees and management alike have been empowered to create an environment that is conducive to increasing employee retention rates and attracting new talent to the district. This has also been proven to be a way for the district to differentiate itself to meeting planners when our sales team goes on the road to sell our business. There are a number of investments being made primarily as part of the human resources budget towards culture improvement, including the creation of an employee engagement manager position, execution of our annual employee engagement survey, employee recognition programs, and cultural and ethnic awareness campaigns, just to name a few. Being named an employer of choice this past May was validation that these investments matter. And while we continue to make these investments, and this is a good segue into business risks, where we identify talent retention and attraction as our first risk in 24. Can we continue to attract and retain employees that fit into our BPX culture and drive the business forward? It remains a competitive labor market, and labor costs have been a challenge over the past several years and could continue to be so in 24, particularly for our food and beverage provider, Levy, and our part-time workforce. Both Levy and the district have worked to provide competitive wages, particularly, again, to our part-time team members. How the 24 labor market plays out, though, remains to be seen. Number two is blue sky and tax revenues, in part because they can be affected by unexpected negative macroeconomic forces that affect the social and consumer business segments of the meeting and convention business or impact business and leisure travel. While we believe our numbers are reasonable and modest, COVID proved how these revenue streams can be impacted in a negative way. And the final risk is any potential delay that we could see in opening the North Building. Marty? No.
Move on.
Move on. Just to be clear, we do expect the North Building to open in spring of 24. There are no obstacles in the way, but until it's open, it's a risk to us. That's all.
It's a risk to you.
Okay. Let's talk about opportunities to 2024 that could cause us to exceed our budget goals. RNC, while the campus has been leased to the RNC, how they might use it remains to be determined. It's possible our budget projections are conservative, which may mean some upside, particularly for our ancillary revenue streams. Blue sky revenue and profitability could be higher as currently budgeted. We identified it as a risk. It's also an opportunity. The next two items in terms of opportunities are worth noting. They're more forward-looking, beyond 2024. The first, the impact of 24 on future year bookings. I don't need to tell this committee how important 24 is going to be to the district and also to the city. We have an enormous opportunity to showcase both when the RNC comes to town in July. We're also hosting Connect in 2024. This is a conference that meeting and convention planners from all over the country attend. There's going to be a ton of buzz and excitement that's going to be created when the North Building opens as well. All of these will help drive interest and demand for future year bookings for both the district and the city. Restricted reserve balance growth is the last point I want to make before we get onto the numbers. I mentioned that by the end of 24, we expect that to be over $31 million. At a certain point, we'll have to start making decisions about what to do with any excess money that sits in this account. First and foremost, it's meant to serve as a rainy day fund for debt service should tax revenues not come in as high as we expect them to do in a particular year. But beyond that, there are other opportunities to leverage these funds. One is defeasing current debt. Another could be for capital expenditure financing. Another could be for future expansion or growth in the district and its premises. Marty and I are continually engaging with our fiduciary advisor, Baird, on this matter, and hopefully in the next 12 to 18 months, we can talk more about how this fund continues to grow and what we think we might do with this. So, any questions on this page or 2024 yet? Okay.
Hey, just real quick, Steve. You mentioned one of the highlights is the opening of the North Building in 2024. Are you already seeing good traction in terms of capacity utilization there? I assume you're already booking that space. How is it? How's that piece going?
Grady, this is Marty. I'll answer that. We're seeing tremendous interest in the building. It's the expansion on a number of fronts. One, the fact that now we have doubled our size, we're able to accommodate more events, where if an event was looking for 12 meeting rooms and a ballroom and it was already committed, we couldn't book anything else. So by doubling our meeting rooms, adding another ballroom, we're seeing more interest because of the capacity issue. And we're also seeing an increased issue in events that otherwise would not have considered us or Milwaukee because we weren't large enough to accommodate their event because of the limited square footage we have. At next week's budget meeting, I will be sharing with the board just some statistics to that very point, letting you know what new shows. A lot of times we can't share the names because the event has asked us to not release the information of the group that's committed, but I will be sharing with you examples and numbers of events that we booked, contracted for 24 and beyond. We're taking contracts for 26, 27, 28, Grady. So it thus far, without opening, we're seeing the impact of having it coming online already to our plan.
Okay, we'll move on to page 17, which is our event mix summary, and this is really where the budget process begins for the district, from which we can derive direct operating revenues and expenses. And when I say establish the event mix, we're really focusing on the number of events, the types of events, and requirements of those events. Looking at the event mix summary, you'll see several years of data here. Column A does represent our 24 event mix. Line 21 shows that we're projecting 319 events. In 23, we budgeted to have 300 events, and you can see in column C our forecast for 23. We're expected to come in right around 267. Again, this goes back to the renovation of the South Building and having to take off sale some areas to complete our renovations. Overall, we believe this budget event mix is a good representation of what we can expect for the upcoming year. Pages 18 and 19 represent the income statement, and I'd like to start with the bottom line first. You can see on line, flip it over here, 66, we're projecting net income before depreciation and expansion debt to be just about $26.8 million, a decrease over our 23 forecast number. Now, I mentioned before that we are projecting year-over-year improvement in the district's unrestricted revenues and expenses, so how can how can this be on the income statement? Well, I want to draw your attention to line 35, interest income. You'll see there a $7.5 million variance from 2023. This interest income is earned on the district's expansion project funds, and such income is being used to fund the project. And it really isn't a revenue we consider to be driven by business operations. We are projecting a dramatic dip in these earnings year over year due to the reduced project balance we expect to be holding in 2024. So if we return to that line 66 and really want to do an apples to apples comparison, the first thing we need to do is subtract that out of the 23 number. And when we do this, line 66 and 24 is actually about 30% greater in 2024 than it is in 2023. So that's really the punchline, the bottom line for the 24 budget. So let's dive into some of the line items more specifically, starting at the top. Line 14, operating income is expected to be up about 50% year over year, a more than significant increase than we'd otherwise see in a typical year. And there's a couple factors driving that number. Number one is the RNC, and is really responsible for the significant increase in line number 1, event room fees. Other ancillary revenues, which are lines 2, 3, 4, and 8, are up due to the increased event activity from the North Building. And lines 11 and 12 are also up. 11 is naming rights revenue. We touched on this earlier, expected to increase due to a full operating year of the Baird Center naming rights agreement. And line 12, parking revenue, is up due to the projected revenues earned from the parking structure opening in May. Line 27, total operating expenses is up 28% year over year. As mentioned before, district's labor expense will be greater in 24 due to the hiring of additional personnel required to operate and maintain the expanded premises, and that's noted on line 15 and subsequently line 16. You'll see line 18, utilities, is up about 20%. We expect rates to remain relatively stable year over year. However, we are budgeting for increased consumption from the North Building. There's other puts and takes here, but the net result is at line 28, net operating income is at $4.8 million, a substantial increase from 2023, and the highest net operating income since Marty joined the organization in 2018. Moving on to non-operating revenues, you can see tax revenues, line 34, are expected to increase overall by 8.6%. I consider this to be a moderate projection for tax revenue growth in 24, not overly aggressive, not overly conservative. Line 35, interest income, is expected to decrease by $7.4 million. We touched on this already. Most of this decrease is associated with the depletion of project funds. The year-over-year variance, again, does not impact the restricted or unrestricted funds in a material way. Moving on to non-operating expenses, you see line 41, salaries, as well as complementary line items 42, 43, 44, and 45 are increasing as a result of scaling up positions for the opening of the North Building. Line 46, pension, as I mentioned before, is actually expected to decrease year over year as a result of Act 12 legislation, however, remains historically high. And line 49, Visit Milwaukee, increasing year over year by about 7%, and this is really driven by our 2023 tax projections. Line 53, insurance, is increasing significantly year over year due to the increased property insurance bill associated with the North Building, as well as the challenging renewal environment we're in, again, particularly on the property side. One other item I do want to note before we leave this page is line 68, depreciation expense. You can see that's expected to more than double as we begin depreciating the North Building in 2024. Any questions on the income statement?
Hey, Steve, I guess I would anticipate 24, the difference between 23 and 24, maybe there's an asterisk, if you will, for 24 because of the opening of the North Building. But 24 probably is a good, I guess, working basis, if you will, for how operation of the expanded center district will look in years going out. But are there any things in 24 that are more kind of one-time unique to the fact that 24 is the opening year that you won't anticipate going out to 25, 26, and beyond?
Yeah, thank you, Grady. I think, to me, one of the biggest differences between 24 and, say, 25 is that it's a partial year of that north building being open. So the revenues are, I would say, depressed in '24 a little bit for the expansion, whereas in '25, where you have that full year, we would expect that to grow. And the same applies to our parking structure and some other ancillary revenue streams in here. So in terms of unique expenses, Grady, I think we're pretty well loaded up on the expense side. Now, we're not going to see the same year-over-year increases in labor that we've seen over the last 2 years. Again, those big jumps are due to scaling up positions. Going from '24 to '25, we would expect to see a much more modest increase based on merit adjustments or otherwise, but not expecting to add a lot of positions after 2024. Marty, do you have anything to add?
So other than the fact that it's a partial year, '24 is going to be a good bogey for us going forward from a comparison standpoint.
It's a unique year, and the RNC, sort of changes the numbers there a little bit too. When we go back and look at historical numbers, Grady, in future years, I think '25 is really going to be that new baseline year that we compare ourselves against.
Yeah, great. That's where I was going to go with as you were talking. '24, there are a number of dials on the revenue and expense side that are still in flux, because when we get into '25, we'll have a full fiscal year naming rights payment from Baird, because we have 4 months in '24 at the transition year rate and only 8 months at the full year rate. We also have some labor expenses that we will be seeing, I believe, increase in '25 in the fact that the new building comes online in May. So January through April in '24, the event activity can't be as high as I expect it to be in January through April of '25 on the event side. So those expenses will go up. You'll also see, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, depreciation will be higher in '25 because we'll have a full year of that. The insurance payment for property will be up because we have 4/12 of an additional calendar or fiscal year of making those payments. So as far as one-time expenses, I don't think we're looking at anything one-time line items, but some of those expenses will go up by 25% or so, as will revenue, hopefully more than offsetting that.
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, that's the exact word I was looking for, baseline. '25 is going to be more of a baseline year for us than '24 will be, but all right, good deal.
Okay, pages 20 and 21 of your packet is our annual capital budget, and you can see this list is pretty substantial. As was the case in prior years, we segmented expenditures into 3 tiers, with Tier A being the priority, which focuses on projects that deal with life safety, building functionality, code compliance, and contractual obligations. Our spend in 2024 of about $3 million is a little less than what we're forecasting for 2023. Not a lot of big projects in this document, in this budget this year. We've got some IT work, continuing to fill our contractual obligation to the admirals. Still a lot of door work to do around campus. But I would say this year it's a pretty straightforward capital budget. Any questions on that? Okay. Pages 21 and 22, 22 and 23 of the packet are budget cash flow projections. One exhibit for restricted revenues and one exhibit for unrestricted revenues. Starting with the unrestricted revenues on page 22, line number 1 is where we expect that cash balance to be as of January 1st. Line 25 is where we expect the cash balance to be as of December 31st of that same year. Line 24 is the net change for the year, a decrease of about $1.7 million. This all ties back to the income statement projections. We knew there would be a little bit of negative cash outflow in '24 as, again, we continue to scale up and incur those pre-opening expenses before that north building opens. By 2025, our expectation is that this is at a minimum break even and even better, kicking off some positive cash flow. Moving on to the restricted cash flows, page 23. Again, the news is positive here. We continue to show growth in that fund balance and expect to end the year at $31 million and change. As I mentioned at the outset of the budget discussion, the stability of both of these funds is great news for the district, and it is going to position us well going into 2025, our first normalized operating year of a new era. That was a quick run through the budget, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's a pretty good summary of what we'll be presenting next Friday. Again, we did review this with Finance. Finance has recommended adoption by the full board next week. This is a budget that we're proud of. It's going to be challenging to meet and beat, but it does not, in our opinion, introduce material risk to the district's financial position. We're excited about it. We're excited about 2024.
The only thing I'd like to add to your comments, Steve, as you're wrapping up, is that the Finance Committee unanimously voted to endorse the budget and recommend it to the full board next week.
Do we have any questions on this? No? Okay. Next, Marty, CEO report.
Just waiting for you to call mine.
Sorry, Marty.
Waiting for the teacher
Marty,
to call on me.
yes, my goodness.
Just a quick update or overview of what I'm going to be sharing next week with the full board, giving you a bookings update. As in response to Grady's question, I do plan to present, share with the board where we are with bookings short and long term and the impact the expansion has had on short and long term business for us, and visit Milwaukee. Give you an update on where we are with the bookings for the rest of the campus as far as the Panther Arena and Miller High Life Theater. Share with you where we are in our planning for the grand opening gala of the North Building, May 16th of next year. Mike Abrams will give a comprehensive update on where we are with the expansion overall. I've got a couple of videos that we would like to share with the board, neither of them extremely long, but we've had some pretty amazing things happen that we've been fortunate to be involved in. One, last board meeting, we shared with you information about our gala giveaway, where we were offering a fully subsidized package worth $50,000 to a not-for-profit organization. We had not yet told the entity that we had selected who they were, so we couldn't share that with you. It turned out to be the Autism Society, and we have a fabulous, I call it a publisher's clearinghouse type of video, where they knew we were coming in for a meeting, but not to award them. So we have that captured. We really want to share that with you. And also, as part of the HR plan to recruit and retain people to work for us full and part-time, Sarah and the marketing team captured testimonials from a very wide range of our full and part-time staff on why they work here, what they enjoy working, why they enjoy working here, and it's to be played as part of the recruiting tool for incoming candidates and incoming employees. And I want to share that with you because we did not script any of it, and had we tried to, it would not have been as sensational as interviewing these people impromptu and letting them write their own scripts. Nothing was written down, but create their own narrative. It was really terrific, and I want to share it with you because of the board. I want you to be proud of it because it's your doing that has enabled us to do this. After next Friday's board meeting, I hope you can carve a little bit of extra time because we are setting up below the meeting room that we're in today. Be about 14 different stations, all told around 54 different easels placed at these stations, where you'll be able to, those sample boards of the expansion. So we'll have samples of the actual carpet that's being installed, renderings of the rooms with the actual furniture that's in them. So it'll give you a really good idea of what's happening across the street. We do expect to be fully enclosed by the end of November, and to that point of being available to look at the facility, we will be sending out next week an invitation with times and dates for you all to sign up. If you'd like to take a hard hat tour of the building, we're going to send dates out and give you the opportunity to sign up so you can see firsthand the amazement of what's going on in the North Expansion, as well as the South Expansion. If any of you are coming this evening for the King Tut VIP reception, you will be knocked over, I hope, figuratively, not literally, because we've already begun installing the new pre-function carpet up on the exhibition hall level. So while we talk about the North Building, we're well underway of modernizing the south building. It's been fully painted on the interior. Meeting room carpet has been replaced on all the second-floor meeting rooms. So there's a lot of activity happening, and really hope you'll be able to, over the next month or so, sign up for a tour and take a look at it, because you'll come out with a huge grin and blown away by what we collectively all are doing for the city. So that's the CEO overview.
That's a lot to live up to. You may have oversold it. Marty.
Impossible.
Okay.
There's no way it could be oversold.
Steve, thank you. Marty, thank you very much. Appreciate it, all the work that goes into building this stuff out, and look forward to further discussion on the board meeting. I was in the Finance Committee meeting earlier today, and we did, again, as Steve said, approve this or endorse this going into the board meeting, the budget. All great things going on. The only other thing we have, next week we have a board meeting on Friday. I would ask that you would all be there. We have a number of different things to vote on. I think, Marty, you said 4 different things to vote on, including the budget, including, I do believe we have the capital maintenance items, the vote on that, vote for the election of the officers as well. So those are all important things. It's a very important meeting for us to be at, so make sure you're there. If you can't be there in person, please make every effort to get there via video or via call. We would love 100% board participation. We've done pretty well on that. Future board meeting dates are out, I believe. Is that right? Or be coming out, Michael?
So the future board meeting dates for '24 are in your packet for today. If we need the committee meetings for November, they are on November 2nd at 8:30, and that will be determined by next week's meeting.
Right, and we will make sure, depending on the outcome of the meeting on next Friday, if we have those committee meetings or not. So those are tentative. We have those as a placeholder more than anything as we move forward. So anything else for discussion, please bring it up now, or if not, please send them into either myself or Marty or Michael. We'll make sure we get them on the proper agenda as we move forward for future board meetings.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Do we have candidates? So real quick, I'm missing the food today, but it's okay. But 2, do we have candidates for all the officer roles for next week?
We do, Marty.
And I did a brain freeze about 10 minutes ago. I couldn't remember if I shared that at the beginning of the meeting or not. We do have the current board members holding the office of Chairman, Vice Chair, Treasury, and Secretary, who are Jim Cantor, Grady Crosby, Mark Flaherty, and Greg Marcus, have all expressed their interest to remain in those positions. So we do have those 4 individuals have identified themselves. No others, but if you're so interested, love to have your name if you're so inclined this year to do that.
No, I'm all good. So we'll make sure we were all good for next week.
Yeah,
That's it.
thank you for asking.
Great, and I know Kirk's going to go over some stuff in the board meeting too, right, next week as well. So a full slate of things, which is great. We haven't met for a while, but we appreciate the time and effort, and we're excited to keep things moving over here. With Marty, you and the team have done a great job moving things forward here. So any other questions? With that, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Kalen, before you run, I just want to let you know you missed good food. I ate your share.